All right.
All right.
I got one off Amazon myself. It's a author copy. Yeah. So.
Okay, we're live. Hey, Phil, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Steve. How you doing?
Glad you could join us today.
That's right. Thank you.
Today we're going to be talking about the origins of Gnosis, a new book Phil just put out, which he was kind enough to send me in an email, and I'm sure he'll have a link for it below, or I'll have a link for it below after the video. I'll enter it in there. I didn't know you had it on line yet.
Yeah. I put them all free. You see, I thought the only way to do this is to just put them out, and this is the new one that I put out for free as well. So the link will be for a free download. Okay, so you can just quickly read it and have a look at it and see what you think, because it's a long text. It deals with a Gnostic text from the Nag Hammadi library called "On the Origins of the World," but it wasn't called that originally. It had no title. So when the translators of those texts went through it, they realized it was talking about creation. You know, it's quite obvious in some parts that it's doing that, but it does it in very strange ways in other parts as well that you wouldn't expect. It's quite esoteric and quite poetic as well.
Yeah, and in the book you included like Poimans, the vision of Hermes, and
that's right. Yeah, because that, to me, that's a foundational book. The tradition says that the Poimans chapter in the Corpus Hermeticum is the proper book. It's the main deal, as it were. And when you read through it, it's like a simpler version of what we find in the Gnostic texts. And basically, all they do is repeat that round and round, usually about 7 times. You know, to highlight the 7 spirits of God as we found in Revelations before, because that does the same thing. It's very Gnostic Revelations. I don't know whether people realize that. It's extremely Gnostic.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed how you bracketed your definitions of what it was saying, because the Poimans in certain areas of that text used to confuse me.
Right. Yeah.
And at the end of that, it says that unless you're enlightened, you're not going to really understand it.
Yeah, and that point, I mean, people can blow that a bit out of proportion, and all he's saying there really is that when you experience this thing called metaphysics, you basically see a movie that nobody else has seen yet. Mm-hmm. So if you've seen the movie, you see it from start to finish, you know every detail, blah blah blah, and when you come back, you say, "Hey, it's like this," and people say, "What are you talking about?" I don't quite understand that bit there, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you haven't got like modern science or modern analysis to sort of use in your vocabulary, it's gonna be poetic, isn't it? Because you're trying to describe things that are beyond the everyday appreciation, as it were. So
right. Yeah, and then recently I've been off YouTube and whatnot, and kind of been working a lot, and you know I took a break from even looking into it, and then recently stuff has just been synchronizing, and I felt like I had to reach out to you and talk to you. So
all right, cool, thanks, man. Yeah. Yeah, happy New Year as well, because I was ill. Nobody knows I was ill over Christmas and New Year. The whole of January I was out. So yeah,
I ended up catching COVID again myself. So
ouch. Yeah, I got it as well.
Twice now I've had it.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah.
You're okay though, thank goodness.
It wasn't so bad.
Yeah, sure, same.
But I'm glad you're better.
Yeah, right. So did you get, I mean, you haven't had a chance, because I only published this book or put it out like a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago.
I've read sure 3/4 of it so far.
Yeah. Oh, you're 3/4.
Yep.
Oh, right. Okay.
3/4 through it.
All right.
Yeah.
Was it? Is there anything taxing? Is there anything that stands out and you think, oh, I don't really get that?
Well, the Nag Hammadi, I'm in the chapter. I've read this chapter twice now, and I forget which one it was, but it was about the Gnostic text itself.
Yeah.
You know, about pistis, Sophia, you know, and all that. And I get a little confused because the wording is changed and the labels are different. Yeah. You know, like reason and whatnot, and
yeah,
logic.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, so if Sophia, I suppose there's quite a bit of confusion when you come to a personification like Sophia, because of the depth of the association with her. She is, in a way, if they call that is wisdom, that's the Greek word for wisdom.
Yeah.
And it's the individual that gains that wisdom, but the testament to the gaining of the wisdom is the Son of God, the cloud. You know, when you appreciate it in its condition when it's born. I don't know whether anyone knows, because they may not have followed you before, but it's born in an infinite pulse that comes from the divine when you have divine union, or you meet your true self, which is we call God. It's literally true, this stuff. You know, it's very, very simple as well. It's very direct. Obviously, there's a lot to say about that, but yes, Sophia, being wisdom, can be associated with the person who is in that condition. That's you, the person looking at the cloud of the Son of God, and the Son of God can be Sophia as well.
So Sophia is just like John of the Bible.
It kind of, yeah. She has a physical connotation as well, being female. You see, there's an addition to her persona, and not just being what's physical. You've come from the universe, which was nothing but physical, into a spiritual condition, which is metaphysical. It means beyond physics, and technically, it's the nature of zero dimension. So it's an expansion of your own inner nature. This experience, that's what it does to you. It's like putting the icing on your cake, you know, with a cherry on top. It's that sort of thing, you know. Yeah, so Sophia has both associations, so we can talk about her and the cloud at the same time, saying, well, here's
the abyss and the cloud, right?
Yeah, and there's also a direct association between the abyss and the cloud as well, because the cloud is the first product of the expansion of the abyss. And it's like an effect because of your pineal gland, because the expansion comes from the center of your pineal gland. And it leaves a registration, which is a bright light. It looks like a cloud with beams coming out of it, you know, and it's frozen because it's an infinite pulse, and it takes no time because it's infinite. So it's timeless and dimensionless. It happens like that, as far as you're concerned.
Maybe we should rehash the reason why you know this. You know,
oh, I see.
You know, because people that are tuning in right now, I haven't been on YouTube for a while. You know, all of this stuff he's talking about is in previous videos, by the way. You know, and Phil's got it all over his channel and in all of his books, and so maybe we should do that. Just maybe.
Yeah. So just to briefly tell people, 8 years ago, I went to a place called Angkor Wat, and out of the blue had an experience which is called Samadhi. It's like transcendental meditation, but it was induced by a vision of a meditating statue. Anyway, so I went into this state called Samadhi, which is like a sacred trance. And you become aware. It's like you expand your own nature out to your awareness, and you become aware of it as something that is timeless and forever perfect, like all is well in that state. You know, it's a different sort of awareness that you gain by becoming still in your mind, funnily enough. It's really simple. So that inculcates an experience with what we call God. And God is your true self, but it's like your true perfected self, if you can imagine yourself in the infinite future. And that person coming back to this moment in time to meet you, it's exactly like that. But that person is now what we call Krishna, or what the Bhagavad Gita calls Krishna. You know, it's a perfected individual, basically, a God person. And so you experience that part of yourself that's already perfect in this experience, which is bizarre sounding, but it kind of makes you your perfected self as a result, because you become it. And then a few days later, you understand it intellectually in your mind, and you have what's called ascension, which is spiritual ascension or spiritual birth. And you literally fly up out of your body, as far as you're concerned. It's an internal subjective experience that is repeatable. So this is, I think, as far as I'm concerned, it's the only repeatable subjective experience. It's so repeatable and well known in human history that it's been written down, and it's in these Gnostic texts, and that's exactly what they're trying to convey to you, that this experience is available to anybody. See, and the
content, several other texts as well.
Yeah, many
over the planet.
Yeah, all over the planet. That's right. The creation text with the floods and all this sort of thing. It's all about this. It's all about the story of creation, turning the crude, childish creator, which is a creative principle, like a spark that rings a bell that is the cosmos, that then produces creatures that can turn the creator into the Son of God in their mind, you see. So the pineal light, as it were, is the Son of God, and the Son of God is not a person as a result. And you become what's called an illuminate. And this used to be normal on the planet. They'd have initiates who would become illuminates, you know. So there were many, many people in the past like this, and that's how there are so many texts all over the place that all correspond, like about creation, see.
From the Anunnaki to the kings of Europe.
Right, throughout history, yeah.
Yep.
You can see it everywhere. The 7 tablets of what the Enuma Elish, the Mesopotamian tablets, you know, these 7 things, 7 aspects of creation. That's a very hermetic thing to do, you know, to embody everything into 7 and have it subdivided in each of those 7 parts. In fact, that reminds me. I wondered what people would think, because there's a passage in the on the origins of the world that is technical and talks about cherubim and seraphim.
That was going to be one of the main things I wanted to talk to you about, because that's
right.
Something new you came up with recently, and I'm wondering what rang the bell for you there.
Yeah, it was. I've had it clattering around in my head for a while, but I didn't know where to put it. I had no sort of means of putting it into any text. I wasn't really doing anything new at the time. And now that I've finally got a Gnostic text that actually focuses on that in one of its paragraphs, I thought it'd be nice to to expand on that for a change. And seraphim are referred to as fiery serpents, in conjunction with the appearance of the Son of God. And so they represent literally these beams that come out of this cloud that is the Son of God, that are very cylindrical and straight, and they open up into 3 little extensions at the end before it fades to black. It's like a hand with 3 fingers at the end of a long arm. And of course,
and are those same rays that are shown on the Akhenaten's relief?
Yeah, I mean the Neem's mask, the Neem's headdress.
That, and when it shows the rays coming down from the Aten.
Oh yeah, the Aten.
At the end of the rays.
That's right, like this. Yeah, I've got it on my wall like that.
Yeah, there you go.
That's it. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the Son of God. This thing here. Yeah, that's the Son of God, and these are the beams coming out of him. But it's stylized. And in this version, there are 14 beams. Of course, that represents the becoming of a female bride, a divine bride of God, as they call it.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's all right.
I didn't mean to take you off subject, but I just wanted to clarify that.
No, cool. In the Egyptian tradition, you lose your phallus, technically, and they dress your whole body as if your whole body becomes a phallus to ejaculate you spiritually into this abyssal condition. So they recorded it as well in ancient Egypt. They knew all about it.
Yeah. Yeah. What's that text when they ejaculate in their hand and then puts it in his mouth and what's that?
Yeah. It's the myth of Heliopolis.
Yeah, the myth of Heliopolis. That's what it is.
Yeah, pharaohs used to go down to the Nile at a certain time of year and masturbate into the river in front of everyone. Like it's a ceremony. It's a big thing. No shit. Yeah, that used to happen. Of course, it commemorates creation. The whole process of creation, from the metaphysics up into the cosmos, the whole thing. Yeah, because of course the creator, he has this cloud has these 2 beams that come out in front of him. Well, the rest of them are like going up, down, and to the right and left, like a big cross. And you're at the end of his right hand, so it's on the left to you. Where were we? What was I just
You were talking about the beams coming down in the three.
The beams from the front. Sorry, I was going off in my mind there.
So I kind of got you off on that tangent. I apologize.
Yeah. So these 2 beams. You're at the end of his right hand, and as such, sorry, man, I've gone off again in a different direction. Why are we saying this?
No, because I wanted you to explain how these things.
The atom, that's right. Yeah, the masturbation thing. That's right. Sorry, yeah. You've moved off completely. So yeah, because you're at the end of his right hand, you're the semen in his hand, as it were, because you're the creative thing. So these Gnostic texts, especially on the origins of the world, talks about how from the point where you are at the end of his right hand is like a starting point that signifies the beginning of the cosmos. And in my opinion, in my mind, I had to sort of wrangle with that and think, well, how is that logically possible? What exactly happens? Because there is a reality to this. You know, it's not just poetry and hoping for the best. These people know what they're talking about. So if you think about it, the abyss being zero dimensional, because it has no dimension, it's infinite, so that's dimensionless. So as far as we're concerned, from this point of view, it's like a zero dimensional point. That's how we perceive it, a singularity. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that connects us to the black hole thing we were talking about before.
Yep.
But see, as a singularity, every single point, if you're in it, it looks like an infinite expanse, and every point in that expanse is exactly the same point, if you see what I mean. Therefore, if you create an event over here, wherever that is, because that's going to be quite difficult to define, an event over here is going to flood the entire space instantaneously. And if it's light that comes into it, which is to all intents and purposes what these people are talking about, the abyss is going to flood with light and become what you might call a white hole, a creative, it's like a creative, the opposite of a black hole, as it were. So this is a sort of technical way of approaching how these people have described what they think the beginnings of time is all about. See?
Yeah, Unseen has just reminded me of why we were talking about the rays. It was cherubim and seraphim.
Cherubim, seraphim as well. Yeah, there's so many things to go over. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, the seraphim, fiery serpents, it's a very quick interpretation to see that it's referring to the beams that come out of this cloud. It's very, very quick to see that. And cherubim, they're always shown as babes, you know, really like newly born babies. I always thought, why do they do that? It's because in the text, they're related to the four sides of the cloud. In Revelations, they're referred to as living creatures, four living creatures. And they're only referred to that because living waters comes out of their surfaces. So it's like a living object. They're saying this thing is alive because it's eternal as the Son of God. So it represents life, and it's the creator. So it also represents the life everywhere in the cosmos. You see what I mean? So these babes, the cherubim, is a way of referring to the cloud as a newborn baby, the Son of God, because the Son of God is always a newborn baby and never anything else.
So to put you on the spot now, I asked you in the past about the Ark of the Covenant. So is the light the Ark of the Covenant?
Right. So in Genesis, they describe the Ark of the Covenant, right? And it is you can. So what you've got is just as in the stuff I write about, where I put everything into a 3-act play, and we start out with a philosophy, which is squaring the circle, and then we apply it to metaphysics, which gives us the metaphysical idea. And then it becomes the cosmos and the completion of the cosmos in the person who squares the circle as well. So it's all about squaring the circle all the way down to the person. You see what I mean? So if that's the case, then you can see that the Ark of the Covenant, you can interpret it literally and symbolically at once. They did actually have an object, it seems, if you read the Ptahhotep material, that is, I'll put as a free download actually under some of my videos.
I was stuck on that. That's half the reason why I'm asking you about it.
He describes the Ark of the Covenant as a box, you know, that is basically a capacitor and an accumulator of energy. But there's a thing, you see, in the ancient past that is a very sticky subject.
Yeah, I didn't want to. I'm not trying to force you into that corner, but
that's right.
The reason why I'm asking about the Ark of the Covenant is because it's depicted as having 2 cherubim on top.
Right.
That's cherubim. The main reason why I'm asking you. And what's the association with that and the light?
Well, if there are 2 beams coming out of the clouds towards you, and you can interpret, you can interpret these things in so many ways. The beam coming towards you, if the cloud in the Genesis story of Adam and Eve is Adam, the creator, because that's what he is right at the beginning, his right arm coming out towards your position is the serpent in the Garden of Eden, because that is the state of Eden, which is paradise and perfection and pristine. T equals 0, nothing's going on, nothing's going wrong. There's no cosmos.
That's the Redeemer aspect of the light coming at you.
Right? Well, yeah, when you see it, it's the Son of God. Yeah, but you see, if you take the same situation, which is ascension, and now realize that it's also the creation situation before the cosmos.
So that's the dual aspect. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So physically, it's automatically going to generate the universe that it needs to produce itself.
Yep. The tree of life.
And in having its own, and in being reproduced again, it becomes a son of God, because the process that led to that takes each one of us. We are representatives of the creative principle, as it were, looking to make the son of God. And you can only do that with God, because it's his son, and you're the mother when you make it, by the way. So you're always seen as a woman. As a physical person, you're always female in these terms.
Right.
See, that's why they show a female suckling her newborn son of God child. Yep. So yeah, we were saying a minute ago about cherubim and seraphim. Just to go back to that, the cherubim represent the cloud itself, as they're always babes, because it is a newborn baby all the time. You know, and the Ark of the Covenant is a physical sort of way of producing something that represents the issue of this creative principle and the nature of creation. This is a cycle point, so it's the most important focal point of the whole process. You know, and in Book of Genesis, you've got this allegorical layer going all the way through, because that's really the story of creation. That is starting with the creator and ending with the Son of God, as in their story, it's Noah. See, it's not Jesus Christ in the New Testament, it's Noah in Genesis. But it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the story of creation. So yeah, why there two cherubim on top? The idea is arcing. You know, you can create an arc with those two cherubim between them, like a sparking. Because it's a capacitor, the physical object, really. In normal modern physical parlance, you'd say, well, that's like a capacitor. It can hold and store charge, which is very powerful and very primordial. And it may well spark between the two so-called cherubim, angels with wings facing forward, with a spark gap between them. So it's a physical object, that. But another issue is they're playing around with energy frequencies to change the weight of objects. So this is one of the things they used to do that we don't know about anymore.
And this is how they built the pyramids and whatnot.
They can get help with that. There are other stories about building the pyramids, like outside one of the sides of the Great Pyramid is the whole floor there has grooves dug into it, so you can roll stones towards the building and then put them in place or whatever. Maybe they use this technique at the building itself. I'm not entirely sure, really, but I know that they had this capability. It's quite simple. It's quite simple. They had great understanding of the nature of energy and the rates of change of energy as well, which is why I write about black holes and include that whole system, because they kind of knew about that a long time ago without calling it the same things that we do today. So all it is energy rates of change. It kind of tells you about itself once you understand its nature in the first place.
Oh, how I want to understand it.
Yeah, well, it's mostly in the book. You only have to extrapolate a little bit from what is in the books I produce on that section to sort of get your head around how easy it is to see what's going on. It's just the universe is going through every potential that energy can have, and it starts out with a position. It can have a velocity, it can have an acceleration, which in the universe turns out to be a circulation around a body, because the universe is about accumulating ideas. So accumulate something in the first place, gives it a constant velocity. In a perfect orbit, there's a constant velocity, and yet the object is continuously falling towards the object, accelerating as it does so. So we have position, velocity, and acceleration accumulated into one idea all at the same time. The only other step you need to realize, that gives you a circle. So the only other step you need to realize is acceleration is changing velocity. So if we go to the next rate of change, all we're doing is saying we're changing the acceleration. And in these terms, the only way to do that is to spiral from the circle into the center. And then you have a black hole, the concept of a black hole, from very simple energy mechanical ideas. It's very simple. So you can imagine people in the past writing these texts had an awful lot of time to think and contemplate. And if they were illuminates, there's going to be a ton of information coming out of them, about all sorts of things, because it all just connects. It's a very simple way of looking at the world. The Hermetic view is a very useful way of looking at things.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at the
comments. No, that's fine, man. Yeah.
Anybody's asking anything.
That's all right.
Hey, need to know, how are you?
Very well, very well. Someone's saying hello.
Yeah.
I did want to mention a technical aspect of the cherubim and seraphim, because they're mentioned in conjunction in a paragraph with the numbering of numbers associated with the Son of God. And of course, it talks about 8 corners per side, and there are 8 sides to the Son of God. And if you don't know about the Merkaba being 2 tetrahedra fused together, making 8 corners altogether, because a tetrahedra has 4 corners, and one represents metaphysics, the other represents physics, the four aspects of physics that you can whittle them down to. And if you join them together, you've got the union of heaven and earth, which is the creation of the Son of God. Therefore, the Merkaba represents the Son of God in sacred geometric terms. And on the outside of the Merkaba, you've got 8 corners, which are literally small tetrahedra.
Yep.
So if I take each one of those tetrahedra and add its opposite to it and turn it into a Merkaba, each of those 8 corners of the original Merkaba are now going to have Merkabas at each of the 8 corners. And 8 times 8 is 64, which is exactly what they talk about in the text. And they're doing that to tell you there's development. They're associating the Merkaba with the Creator. And he develops as a fractal, as it were, to the creature that reproduces him as the Son of God. And therefore, there's 64 associated with that. And then they add the kingdoms, the whole system of kingdoms, even though there's 7, when you complete them, the abyss and the light is the 8th kingdom as far as you're concerned for you, even though it's the first of the system externally. So you have the 8 plus the 64 is a way of saying metaphysics and physics at the same time. It's a complete statement of reality, which makes 72. And of course, there are 72 3-letter names of God, the Creator, the light in Hebrew.
Yeah, I seen what you just explained on your scale thing when you put that V, and then you put the 7 Hermetic Principles, from vibration all the way to mentalism. Yeah. I see that 8th one is the correspondence between them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, correspondence. That's right. And it always suggests the correspondence is the first of the Hermetic Principles.
Yeah.
As far as I remember, and that is a correspondence between the Son of God and the Creator.
Yeah. That's how I see the 8th one is the one in between those 2.
Yeah, sure.
Sides of So
that's right.
Am I on the spot there thinking that, or? I mean.
So I wanted to say as well that in this text it's so long because it kind of, I think we mentioned, it kind of does the same thing as Revelations. It's as if it's a sort of literary menorah where it keeps talking about the same thing. In Revelations, it goes away from the Son of God, then back to him, away from him, then back to him, to physical issues, then back to spiritual issues. In this one, it's the scene of the beginning of time, T=0 state, with you looking at the cloud in the abyss all the time, and it just focuses on that the whole way through, effectively the whole way through, and it's a little encyclopedia on how it's used in metaphorical terms, because at one point they're calling it Eros, the god of passion and love and what have you, which is a Greek personification. One of its aspects, and how beautiful he is and how wonderfully he makes you and all this sort of thing, which is a way of talking about and illuminate.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of ancient Greek philosophy going on, and gods, names of gods like Epinoia and Pronoia. These are all Greek appellations. You know, pronoia is the opposite of paranoia, where somebody who has pronoia thinks the world is working in their favor.
Yeah.
So they use that to say, well, the person who's ascended to the right hand of this light, the world has worked in their favor. So they are pronoia. You see what I mean? So they talk about you in that position in these terms. They also call you epinoia. And they talk about you in terms of the infinite pulse that took you to that condition. They say that the creator gives some of his power to his mother, and his mother is used at the end of his right hand. By giving power to his mother, it's basically saying he generates the universe from that position. See, in the hypostasis.
This is essentially what causes Gnosis, the knowing, right?
Yeah, being in this situation is like personal proof that you've understood the nature of reality in the first place, and you put the final thing together when you met your own divine nature.
Right.
Yeah, that's what happens. So you accumulate understanding through time. You know, that's why I put all this stuff in the books, because that is the accumulation of the understanding. So when it's in your mind, when you've seen it, you've exposed yourself to that, it will kind of rewire your brain.
And then you start tying things together, and also through the great work. And the great work is all of it, and putting it all together.
Yeah, I mean, the universe itself and its process is the great work of God. Who's turning his crude young child creator into his perfected son, the Son of God. That's the principle.
I never put those two together until just now, actually.
Yeah. So the painting with the old man with the beard who's chiseling out something on a board, and there's a young man holding a candle to light, you know, what he's doing, and there are two angels standing behind. That scene represents metaphysics in a painting. There's so many paintings that do this. You know,
and in your opinion, was Da Vinci enlightened? He must
well, there's the thing. You see, when you're dealing with painters, they always copy the painter who came before. You know, the master who was before, and all these stories and things are so embedded in the human psyche in general, all across European society for hundreds of years, if not thousands. It's okay to assume that painters were doing things to a sort of standard they knew about, but were not privy to themselves, because illumination, as far as I'm concerned, it took me to study mathematics and physics to make sure that the stuff I was reading in the Hermetic and ancient tradition had validity, you know, because there's a connection there. The old weights and measures idea of being very precise in ancient Egypt and having precision stones, precision building making, all that sort of thing, that shows a high level of sophistication mentally. You see what I mean? And it's just, that's the same level of sophistication that we expect from our modern day scientists. So they had this rigor in the past that I think people, the academia of today, kind of scoff at in a way, just because of the associations with fruitcakes and cranks and people who come up with weird ideas associated with them that have no basis in history or anything like that. You know, it's an open season on the Great Pyramid for what it is and what it does, when it's a multifunctional building, really.
Somebody's asking where to get your books, and you can get them on Amazon. On almost every previous video we've ever done, they're posted in the description. I mean,
yeah, but if you go to my channel, it's just Phil Langdon. I'm on YouTube. Just Phil Langdon, you'll find me. You'll see. You'll see sacred geometry at the top of the page. You know, the Merkaba, the cube. You'll see all that, and then if you just scroll down, you'll see a video advertising all my. But there's 5 books advertised, and they're all free downloads in the write-up underneath that video, as well as their individual videos on my channel page as well. So,
Need to Know is asking, can I ask how he came about his vast knowledge of Kabbalah for my own self-seeking purposes?
Yeah. I read Kabbalah since the age of 22, and I'm 52. So that's 30 years ago. And I found it very easy to digest, but it's very rich. It was a standard book, actually, published by Thames and Hudson, just called Kabbalah, that is like a resume of the whole subject. And it's basically metaphysics, an attempt at associating it with the start of the universe and the way we see physics today. And I realized it was so close that there was something in it. So I studied it. From then on, I was sort of comparing it to everything. And I did physics at university and realized there were patterns going on that you can relate to Hermetic stuff and Kabbalah. So I started slowly putting that together, and that's sort of finalized in these books. I realized how simple it was in the first place. And now they're published in my books. So you can see that, and you can get it. It's quite simple in a way. It's quite easy to grasp, because I've done that on purpose to show you that everything just follows a sort of 3-step process. Mm-hmm. And once you realize that, it becomes very simple, and it's a very metaphysical way of looking at what we call the manifest world. So, and where did I get my information? Well, there's all that 30 years of previous history, and then I had this illumination event, which turns out to help you with all this stuff, because you know where it goes. If you see the end of it, or the beginning of time, as they call it, you can.
But originally, you had this yearning in you to want to know, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that yearning brought you from like Stan Tenen to Arthur Young to Bruce Lee to all these characters in your learning path, right? Go ahead, enlighten us on that.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, when I was a teenager, I did martial arts, and of course, everybody knows about Bruce Lee. So I studied him and found out very quickly that he was a philosopher. So I studied his philosophy, and it was Taoism basically, and he applied it. So I had an example straight away of a deep, rich philosophy with applications and how that works. And that was a real foundational thing for me that I went to university with later on. And I did maths and physics, and I found out that I found Kabbalah when I was at university, and then I found Stan Tenen as well. So when I studied his stuff, he started a Meru Foundation in New York about the sacred geometry of the Hebrew alphabet and how it's used and applied in texts. And he used the work of a guy called Arthur Young, who invented the Bell helicopter, who was a logician. And an engineer. He liked to know how things really work, and he came up with this. The 7-color map on the torus is a mathematical identity, but nobody had applied it to anything in nature before until Arthur Young came along. And when he identified the human being as the last so-called kingdom of accumulation, because that's a natural accumulation of energy that makes a humanoid being, he didn't know how to connect that with the beginning of the system. He didn't have that. He didn't realize it was ascension or spiritual ascension, which is what religion talks about. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that, and when I had the experience, I realized, oh my God, I see. This is why the Gospel of John calls this light the creator of the universe as well, because there's a correspondence, as it were, hermetically between those two, between the zero and infinity. They're just either side of the same thing, the same coin. You see, right. But it's just about perspective, because you're an individual being who has an observer's unique perspective. So expanding that to the T=0 moment is about expanding your perspective to God's point of view, so you can see everything at once. And of course, the Creator encapsulates everything about the universe all at once. So you're seeing the poignancy of existence in that sense.
Right. And Allie Berry's asking if she can narrate your books live on her channel.
Yeah, of course you can. You're very welcome. You do anything you want with them. I kind of want people to do that.
Right. I mean, that's the purpose of doing it, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for that as well. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, Allie's an awesome person.
I'm very passionate about the contents of these books. I'm very passionate. I really, really enjoy doing them, as well.
And somebody's asking about some teachings say that sexual transmutation is the key to enlightenment. What do you think?
You mean tantric sex, that sort of thing?
And then they go on to say we have 3 main nadis in our subtle bodies: Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. Yeah. In the spine. Yeah. Yeah. Kundalini is activated with sexual transmutation and then elevates within Sushumna, which illuminates pineal and pituitary glands.
Right. I found, I guess you can do that. I've said before, I've had conversations with the guy who runs the Kundalini Center in central London. And he reckons what I had was a standard Kundalini experience, but that nobody there talks about seeing the cloud, you see. And slowly, I've been putting together the variations on the kind of experiences people can have. And one of them, for instance, is the expansion experience, which somebody called Gopi Krishna had, who was quite famous for it. He was meditating and he felt he had an expansion, which is like expanding into the abyss. The thing that seems to differ is I didn't do Kundalini yoga and I didn't do yoga. I know it's an Indian system that is well founded and it goes back thousands of years, across the world. Effectively, we can find traces of that in Ireland, even, yoga practice, which is very, very good, very useful. I simply didn't do it, and I went the mental way, the way of knowledge, as it were. So perhaps I'm not the best person to comment on the Kundalini path as such. However, I've not heard someone who's done Kundalini come out and say, look, I had this expansion experience and turned around in the expanse and I saw this white cloud and realized afterwards that it's what religion talks about. I haven't seen that, and I really want to see that because I want it to be a normal experience for everyone.
Well, I haven't heard anybody but you stated actually, and the only reason why I believe you is because you've related it to every text that I've ever had interest in, and you've explained it to a point to where it makes sense to me that you're telling me the truth.
Yeah, so. the only reason that it happened, it worked, I think, is because I was at that place called Angkor Wat. I think these places are designed. Honestly, there's water underneath the temple, and I think that has something to do with it. And it makes you feel a certain way in the first place, as if it's preparing you for real relaxation. It's a very relaxing place, Angkor Wat, and you feel that as soon as you get there, like it's just dead still.
It's the biggest religious temple on earth, isn't it?
Say again?
It's the biggest religious temple on earth.
I think it is, yeah. It's also referred to as heaven on earth, which I can relate to because as far as I'm concerned, I found out what heaven is and what it, what it feels like to be in heaven while I was there, because that was part of the experience. And I didn't do yoga to get to that. I simply focused on a white light and became the stillness of mind, basically.
And that's probably what yoga does for the one who does
I guess it does, but I wouldn't know because I've never been to a yoga class. I don't know what they practice, because I can't really comment. I'd like to be able to, really, but I don't understand why they don't talk about the cloud. I'd really like to hear about that from somebody else, just to confirm it across the, across humanity, as it were, because I've not heard anyone yet. And I'd really like to, really.
Well,
so I think I'm trying to help with that, because for me, it was about knowledge and understanding. And what produced the illumination event was literally understanding that there's a relationship between spirit and energy, and that it is the one thing. It has these two aspects, and they're both the same in opposite states at the same time. See, there's that particular understanding, and that's what opened the narrow gate, or the single gate in my head, and gave me that expansion experience to the cloud. So to me, that's what produces it. And I've been trying to find other people who've had that sense, and it's difficult. It's been difficult, really.
Well, have you met anybody else that you think has seen the light?
No, because there are certain things about that kind of person that you're going to know straight away. If you've seen it, the movie, you know how someone is, and they if they suggest it, you can tell they're simply suggesting it, and they don't really know, which is a giveaway, because the first thing you see when you turn around is the right hand of the creator, about 1 foot away from your point of view. It's right in front of your face. Mm-hmm. His hand with the 3 prongs sticking out. You got a perfect, well-defined view of his hand. You know exactly what it looks like, And if anyone doesn't know that, then they haven't been in that situation. You see what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Because that is so prominent. It's spoken about all the time. Yeah. Right. Anyway.
Yeah, and somebody made a comment, and I feel I empathize, because I feel the same way. I'd like to go there, but it costs so damn much money to get there.
Yeah, but right. But
$5,000 it would cost me to get there. And back.
Oh God, yeah, I know. So around the world, I don't know where you are, but there's going to be something in America that has the same kind of energy. But really, I think that I don't know whether you should worry about that, because I didn't go there in order to become an illuminator or anything. You see,
right?
I just went there as a tourist. I didn't expect it to have that effect on me. But if you practice this anyway, wherever you are, you can produce it anyway. It's just like a nudge in the right direction, these temples, I feel. and you don't really need them. It just helps, because modern life is not as relaxed as it used to be, you know, a long time ago. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff going on in our heads all the time because of online, whatever.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, sure.
Work, so, and everyday life.
Yeah, that takes up a lot of time, and you're supposed to be spending that time contemplating these things, you know?
Yeah. And people are in the comments relating what you were talking about, like, oh, yes, Michael Feely describes Christ as the seed of light traveling up the spine to Golgotha, the skull, through pituitary divine femme waters. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the physiology of the process. Yeah, and I'm guessing you can do it Kundalini wise, but you're still going to have to engage stillness of your mind, even if you're doing Kundalini, which means kind of forgetting about your body and not having anything on your mind, and literally just focusing in the moment on white light. That did it for me for some reason. And then the illumination a few days later is the mental thought experiment where you can literally understand the duality of opposites, which is motion and stillness, as it were, as two aspects of the same thing that feed each other in a loop. And once you get this loop, this chicken egg that never ends, that is the nature of oneness. And because it's a sort of loop, you can think of it as a circle that can have any radius you like. So the understanding of it allows you to experience every single size from 0 dimension all the way out to infinite expanse. But because it's infinite, it happens instantaneously. So it doesn't take time. You see, it just happens straight away, and you find that you're an infinite expanse from a tiny singularity in the center of your head, just like that. You know, it's like wiping away the universe all of a sudden, and there's nothing, just nothing.
Now let's shift gears here a little bit. We were talking about like Nag scrolls and you know the Apocryphon of John and whatnot, but and Sophia and whatever, but in a I don't know, a kid-like form, this very same issue is established through like folk tales or children's stories. Why don't you go into a little bit of that and you know and point out.
Yeah, sure. I didn't realize when I was a kid, all the fairy tales I was reading were the same story repeated over and over again with different characters, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, you get things like the Three Musketeers, that story, which is fairly recent in historical terms, with three musketeers who protect the king, and they take on the addition of a fourth, D'Artagnan, you know. And what you have there is metaphysics, because they're related to the king, they're protectors of the king. So the three musketeers are the three aspects of spiritual metaphysics, which is 0, 1, and infinity. You know, these are all 0-dimensional identities. So the one nature, the singular nature, which is 0-dimensional, has these three aspects, and we go through life to experience them. So the story of the Three Musketeers is a representation of that process that produces the Son of God, who's represented by D'Artagnan. Even though, you know, he's not portrayed as a son of God in the stories, but it's the same principle. It's a metaphysical process that completes itself through physical nature and incarnation. And you'll find exactly the same principle in the Goldilocks story of, you know, she's got golden hair. she's like the Son of God herself. She goes into a house run by bears, and of course the house represents your mind. When you dream of a house, it's supposed to represent your mind. And she finds 3 bowls of porridge, and one of them's too hot, one's too cold, and one's just right. And the principle there is the expansion of the metaphysical seed of creation produces a universe that relinks back to that original seed, which is the abyss. And they're showing that in the sense that you can see it in Titian's painting, in fact, where God is shown in the air. The apostles are shown on the ground, and in between you have a cloud, which is the Son of God, and the ascending Virgin standing on that, going up to heaven. You have the nature of reality shown to you as heaven, which is spirit, energy, which is the cosmos, shown as the apostles, and the abyss with the light in between. And this is their expansion of the metaphysical three. see, into reality. So it's the totality of reality. Sorry?
That same tree process or archetype.
Yeah, that's right. So you have now the representation of totality. Yeah, which is, of course, heaven is just right.
Yep.
Like the porridge, that's just right. And the abyss is too cold because it's absolute zero, the abyss. In physical terms, absolute zero. So it's too cold. And then the cosmos is all activity and too hot. So you can't relax. It's
right.
You know, it's that sort of thing. Yeah. So heaven's just right. So there you have a fairy tale for kids about three bears and their porridge, you know, with a girl with golden hair. That's exactly the same as the Three Musketeers.
So now do you think, now my question is, again, just like I asked you about the paintings of Da Vinci, or, you know, these people that are writing these things, it's just embedded within our consciousness that this comes out. And it's like the movies of today, where there's always a hero and there's always a villain. And you know how they always end with the guy getting the girl, which is the girl's the light. I mean, is that what you're saying? It's just embedded within us that it's going to come out that way because that's how the creator speaks through us, or the creative principle, or, you know.
Yeah, it's the foundation of theater. I mean, I think that's pretty much why I've used the 3-act play concept to define the squaring of the circle, you know, the development of the square circle to the flower of life in sacred geometry. The nature of the metaphysical seed, making a cosmos which has black holes in it that reconnect with the abyss. It's like a loop coming back in terms of energy and rates of change only at that stage. So it's quite crude and primordial. You know, then it produces the human in the galaxy, as it were. So I've gone off again. What was the original thing?
I was asking you how all of these things manifest themselves in our reality if the people that are making the stories up aren't illuminates themselves.
I see. Yeah, that's right. So I was thinking of the theater idea, the idea of a play, you know, like the old Greeks used to have tragedies and comedies. Just like Thai music, there's tragic Thai music and comedic Thai music. It's exactly the same principle. So yeah, in a play, you have 3 acts. The first act introduces characters, second act puts them into some sort of turmoil or challenge. And the third act sees the resolution of the characters in the play and they're overcoming whatever problem they had. And there you have the story of the cosmos and the idea of the creator turning into the son of God. So really it's a human version of the classic cosmic struggle. The cosmic struggle, the tribulation, as it's called. Yeah, our life is a tribulation, apparently, in these terms.
Like the sun going across the sky. It's born in the east, it goes to high noon, and it sets in the west. Yeah,
the natural world was used. Yes, the whole thing is embedded. I mean, metaphysics is embedded in our culture, in plays. The 3-act plays is a metaphysical expression. See, that's why I used it in the book. The sun across the sky also has 3 stations: the sunrise, high sun, and sunset. That's exactly the same commemoration as metaphysics. In the the Apocrypha of John, he talks about, first of all, meeting God as 3 people: a young boy, a young man, and an old man. And of course, those are the 3 stations of the sun, to say, here is metaphysics. See, it's just telling you that John is experiencing metaphysics in that moment. And by the way, that there is no particular person called John. John is the name, or Yochanan is the name used for any illuminate. Anyone who finds illumination is John. See, so it's like John Doe.
Right. That makes
he's the John Doe, the John Doe of angels. Yeah.
Is anybody who signs their name.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Because we're all the same, you know, it's all the same. That moment, that T=0, when you're looking at the cloud, every single person experiences that. Therefore, we're all the same person in that moment at T=0. And there's a quote from On the Origins of the World towards the end, where they talk about how everybody puts their semen into the navel of the world, and that is Axis Mundi, where this light is. So if everyone's putting their semen into that, the idea is that all of us are spirits who ejaculate from our body phallus. We're all semen putting into the Axis Mundi, you know, the center of the world. This is the center of the universe. This is the point where the universe expands from, supposedly, as it were. See? So it actually talks about the idea that everybody contributes to this T=0 moment in their personal ascension, and we're all the same person at that moment. We're all basically like God in that moment. Anybody is like that when they're there. See?
Yeah.
I found that fascinating, that idea that I came up with in physical terms, because it's like a quantum event, if you like. The creator, because it's born in an infinite pulse.
The ultimate quantum entanglement is what you're saying.
Kind of, yeah. The infinite pulse is like that. So in physical terms, the only registration is going to be just a quick flash of the creative principle and the light that you are at the end of his right hand. Straight away from T=0, there's motion and creation and turmoil of the cosmic creation itself. But T=0 itself is frozen. It's a frozen moment of perfect, pristine clarity and it's a diamond of God, you know, the best creation God has come up with, and there it is at the start of all things. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest thing you wanted to convey to us today in this video that we're doing about your book, or which, you know, what's the biggest message you want to?
Yeah, these works really are designed to help you achieve your own illumination. That's the point of them. So what's in them is the content that led me to illumination. Therefore, I'm giving it to you to show you an example of how it's worked in my life.
Yes.
So then you can look at it and say, well, I guess this is the kind of stuff that is important. And after a while, you might realize why it's that important, because it has a it's the idea of being able to see for miles, you know, like in The Hobbit, the story of The Hobbit, with Bilbo walking through the forest with the dwarves, and he climbs a tree because they lose track of where they are. The forest plays with their mind, and they kind of go around in circles. So Bilbo climbs a tree and he looks across all the treetops, clearly seeing the mountain in the distance, the misty mountain, and knows exactly what direction to go in. So it's like that, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So this work I produce is to help you see that and see how simple steps can be taken and simple ways of seeing things can be absorbed, so that you realize there is a purpose to your being here, and it's a wondrous thing. It's a really great thing, you know, because becoming an angel is a phenomenal thing. There's far more to come afterwards, as it were, you know, instead of just moping around the same old whatever, you know. So the information is there to inspire you as well. I'm trying to inspire people because it's a lot easier than you think. A lot easier than you think. It's just a question of knowing what it is and how it works. That's all. If you didn't know that, you'd have to find it.
Seed, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, the seed is planted. If it's planted in rocks, it won't grow, and if it doesn't have water, you know, what's that parable again?
Yeah, that's in isn't that the Gospel of John?
Yeah, I believe.
I think it's in the Gospel of John. Yeah, the sower of seeds. Like in Babylon, they had a guy with a bag of pollen. The idea is that your speaking is like a spring of clean, fresh water that bubbles up in other people, you know, and it really feeds their soul. It feeds their mind as well. To hear that certain things are known about that other people might not know about, you know, and it does help you with your clarity. So yeah, sowing seeds to different kinds of people. Different people receive things in different ways depending on how they appreciate, you know. I make an example in the book. If you give a Shakespearean play to a monkey, you know, it'll rip the pages out and wipe its ass with them.
I love that. I wanted to bring that up, but I'm glad you brought it.
Right, so it's the quality of the person who's looking at the material as well. You know, are they ready for it? Is it a bit above them? I don't know. I made it simple as far as I'm concerned. I made it really accessible. That was a point, to make it accessible and bring it away from all this doom and gloom, secret society sort of shadow that this material is associated with, you know, because that is unnecessary.
Yeah, that's, you know, and here's the distractions I deal with on a daily basis. My dog's barking constantly.
That's right.
But
I
no,
love dogs.
Recently I was watching a friend of mine doing a live stream, and he was talking about, you know, the ancient texts, and hey, knock it off. She knew I was talking about her. But talking about exactly what you were just stopping, talking about the
It's time to walk.
and you know, the secret societies and whatnot.
Yeah.
And you know,
too serious. It's all too serious.
Yeah. And I was trying to convey that, like, he was talking about Yaldabaoth and the demiurge and how they're got negative connotations connected to them. And I was trying to explain to him that, you know, maybe you should go visit Phil's channel and see that it has another aspect as well. And everything in life is going to have a negative aspect. But, you know, there's why don't you touch on the demiurge and Yaldabaoth and that concept of the Gnostics? And
yeah, sure. I mean, all you've got there is the idea of something that is ignorant becoming aware. So the ignorant thing, the creation that's ignorant, is the creator who's blindly, automatically, that means he's automatic. When it describes him poetically as being blind and foolish, it really means he is an automatic consequence of ascension. And it's this thing we mentioned a minute ago of everybody contributing to the same T=0 moment from any point in time in space-time. See? So, but they're all contributing to that one particular moment. So it overemphasizes that moment in reality. So as the creative principle, he's considered blind and kind of stupid because he just goes rah and generates this horrible, wrathful universe, which is imperfect in comparison to what is spiritual, which is considered to be perfection because it's zero-dimensional and endless.
Which is Jesus.
Yeah, so and our job basically is it's as if we are God. It's as if God is the father of this boy who has thrown a tantrum and thrown something out of his pram that's caused a mess. And the only way that God is going to clean up the mess is by entering the creation that his son has produced as the creator, who is kind of ignorant and blind, entering that creation and transforming it and turning it spiritual again, which is the purpose of our lives in these terms. You know, that we're here to transform our particular piece of this dark material, this ignoramus of a creator, to regenerate the Son of God and have heaven on earth as a result.
Like the beautiful lotus flower is born from the murkiest muck.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough. It's very physical. You're on your own kind of thing a lot of the time on Earth. I can see how very difficult life is, and I've had a difficult time as well, purely because I wanted to keep up with knowledge and information, and life kept pulling me in different directions, and I found that quite difficult myself. You know, I nearly came a cropper. I've nearly died a few times in my life, so I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky to be alive, to be honest. Anyway.
Yeah, me too. I've had a couple of close calls.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, a lot of people do. They lose a few of the 9 lives that they have. You know?
And each one of those moments, though, it kind of inspires you to and makes you realize that maybe I'm here to realize something bigger than myself.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You know, when you're pulled from however, you know, I had voices in my head speak to me. One time I'm working underneath a car and the car's running in a garage. And I was being poisoned, in essence, you know, by carbon monoxide.
Right.
And something in my head clicked and said, "You better get out of here." You know, something just, and I didn't have any clue that I was about to pass out. And at the doorway, I passed out.
Yeah.
And with my head outside the door, and I survived it. You know,
well done.
There was a couple instances in my life where I had this voice speak to me. You know.
Yeah, sure.
And lo and behold, I'm talking to you today, Phil.
Yeah, right. There is such a thing as clairaudience. I've experienced clairaudience. It's not voices in the head as such. It's clairaudience in a specific moment, just a one-off. You know, like
and
you're
what do you
saying
mean by
there,
that?
For a specific purpose. Yeah, I've actually experienced that. Yeah, so it is real. There is a
meaning
reality
your higher self is actually. Yeah, your true self is speaking to you, telling you, you know, you're gonna fuck up. You better get out of here.
I just think that there's a more internal, because Kate Banks, this artist that I'm doing a documentary about, is all about the internal world. that I think the modern commercial world completely ignores, but uses in its favor, you know. So the inner world is very, very powerful, and it's infinite as well. I think the modern person has kind of forgotten that. A lot of people are using their imagination in place of intuition. There's a distinction, a difference between those two.
Oh, yeah.
Intuition intuition is the imagination rooted in common sense and reality, you know. To keep, you've got to keep your feet on the ground, and not go off into whatever you fancy. You can, it's, you know, just like being in the abyss. You can produce anything in the abyss. If you're stuck there, you can make anything you want, but none of it has any value, because it's based on what you want, not what there is. And there's the idea of the truth being fixed and severe, regardless of your opinion. The truth is the truth. It'll always be the truth. It's the truth forever, because it's never not true. So the truth is eternally true, and therefore immanent. That's the word, immanent, meaning ever present.
And that's depicted on the Egyptian sarcophagi as the flail aspect.
The flail with it, holding a flail is like saying you've understood the truth, so it'll no longer berate you. Yes. Therefore, you have the authority to hold the flail that berates, like the truth.
Yeah,
you're saying I am truth. Yeah. That's what you're saying.
And like then the crook aspect, or the crook, in the other hand, is.
Yeah, the crook is a symbol of the shepherd of men. So it's like Hermes. Hermes holds a crook, like a pharaoh. A pharaoh is Hermes Trismegistus. A magi, you know, an illuminate, somebody who knows the beginning of time and the end of knowledge, as Krishna calls it, which is a reference to seeing the abyss condition with the light, and figuring that out and knowing about that, you know.
Could also be the redeemer aspect of the light. Right?
Yeah, that's right. You can connect the flail and the crook with the creator, who is severe and indifferent and external to you when you're born physically, yep, as the creator from the abyss, you know, at the start of the universe, into the Son of God, who is like a shepherd of men, who tells people the truth and doesn't lie to them. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Awesome.
Do you want to stop, because I need to get on and make some food?
Yeah, that sounds good. I appreciate you coming on, Phil, and I'll put your links in the description here after the video uploads.
Okay,
and
thanks, dude.
I totally appreciate everything you do, man.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate you asking for this as well. Thanks again.
We got to do this more often.
Yeah, it's always good talking. I'm pretty much back to normal. I think, you know, there was a few disturbances in the recent past I had to deal with, but I think I'm pretty clear now.
Well, I totally appreciate you, brother.
That's right. Thanks very much, man. I appreciate it. Yeah.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I appreciate you as well. And you can find Phil's books on his channel at Phil Langdon on YouTube, and everything you can download for free, or you can buy them on Amazon. And I've had all of his books, but since giving them away to people because I read them. And I'm going to get his newest one, which is The Origins of Gnosis by Phil.
The Apocryphon I've done the Apocryphon of John as well.
Oh, you did that now?
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, dude. I was actually going to add it to the Origins of Gnosis book, but there was too much. It was like three chapters of the same stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
And this is true. You do realize after reading it, even if you're not an Illuminate, that it is a repetitive thing over and over and over, as long as you get through the murk and mire of the physical description of it all.
That's right. So, yeah, they're metaphors. Yeah, that's right.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Phil. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Take care.